Hello, fellow stampers. I'm Yana Smakula for My Favorite Things. Welcome back for another video tutorial. Lately, I have been rather fond of coloring with alcohol markers in a different, non-traditional way. In a way that does not require blending. And today I have a video to share showcasing this technique, as well as pattern stamping and masking with the My Favorite Things Peony Perfection stamp. I started to work on my card as usual by stamping the selected image in alcohol marker friendly ink on white cardstock using my Mini Misty stamping tool. You don't really need to use a Misty or similar stamp positioner for this project, it's really optional. Having stamped the image, I proceeded to color it. The coloring technique I'm using today works well on large images with a lot of open space, such as this flower. The technique works well with any alcohol markers. I've found I prefer to use those markers that have a bullet nib, as that type of nib makes it easier to apply the color the way I want it applied. Start with applying the lightest color to the entire image. I'm starting by coloring the stem and leaves using lightest green. I'm using Nuva markers from Tonic Studios for this project, and this color is 410 Persian Lime. Don't limit yourself just to these markers. Any alcohol markers work for this technique. Apply a solid layer of color and then set that piece aside to let the marker dry on the paper. This is important. You want to let the marker dry completely before applying the next color. While that green color is drying, I am going to apply the base color to the petals of my peony. I'm using a 449 color for this. I'm actually using the chisel nib here as I just need to color a rather large area and I'd like to do that quickly. And the chisel nib allows me to quickly and easily color my flower. With that done, I'm going to leave it to dry and go back to the stem and leaves. The base color is now dry on the stem and leaves, and I can apply my medium color. The idea is to apply each consecutive color in a way so there's a clear definition between the colors. There's no blend, there's a harsh line. That's why it's important to wait for the previous marker layer to dry. The medium green color I'm using here is 416 Wine Leaf. Once I apply the color, I let it be. I don't go back to the light marker and I do not blend. My base flower layer is now dry and I can add the medium color. For this, I'm using a 451 Pink Lady color. My technique here is to draw a freehand circle using the marker, preserve the area inside the circle, and color everything outside that circle using my marker. That circle, that is the highlight on the petal. It doesn't necessarily have to be a circle. It depends on the petal shape. It can be an oval or a wonky rectangle or something like that. I find this technique to be easier on the wrist. This doesn't require any blending and you're simply applying color. So that takes less work to color the image and puts less strain on your wrist. Next, let's add our dark green. I'm using 417 color Hunter Green. With each consecutive color, you cover a smaller and smaller area. I'm adding just a little bit of this dark green to my stem, shading it on the left-hand side. When it comes to the leaves, I color just the base of the leaves and add shading where there is a leaf fold. Our leaves are done. We're only using 3 shades of green to color the leaves, light, medium, and dark. The flower itself will take more colors, 5 in total, but will end up having the same colored look like the leaves. My next pink color is 453 Paradise Pink. What I love about this technique the most, as opposed to the traditional coloring with blending, is that I don't need to use marker colors that blend well together. On the contrary, I try to pick the colors, the shades that aren't too close, aren't too similar, to be able to provide the contrast, that difference between the colors on my image. Looking good. I colored all of the petals using the Paradise Pink color and let the petals sit for a few minutes while the ink dried. Next, I'm using 379 marker and starting to add shadows. I follow the same technique. I draw a circle and color everything outside the circle, preserving the highlight. On some petals where there isn't much room to do the circle technique, I just draw a wonky line and color in everything on one side of the line closest to the base of the petal, adding my shadow. My last marker is number 381, Black Cherry, and this is going to add deep, dark shadows to my peony and complete this piece. Again, I draw a wonky line and color my petal, adding a shadow. Using a marker with a bullet nib as opposed to using a brush nib makes it much easier to draw shapes on your petals, like drawing that line or drawing a circle. You certainly can color like this with Copic markers or other markers that have a brush nib. For me, however, I've found it easier to color when I have a bullet nib marker. Here's a look at this finished piece. It looks very different, very graphic-like, and very modern, I think. Tell me in the comments if you like the way this looks. Now at this point, you can leave your panel as is and use it on a card. I like to stretch my supplies and I often step outside my comfort zone. And I like to try something different. So I decided I would stamp a pattern, a background pattern using this image. I first made a mask for my flower by stamping this image onto masking paper and cutting it out with scissors. Making a mask might seem like a tedious process, but you make one mask, and if you're careful enough, you can use it several times, and that's usually enough to last a very long time in the card making world. I masked the flower I just colored as I wanted to stamp additional leaves. Now, to make it easier to stamp just the leaves, I went bold and I cut my stamp apart. I can always put it back together when I want to stamp a full peony, but I wanted to be able to easily stamp just the leaves, so I cut them off. I went ahead and stamped additional images on my panel, building the background. I stamped 3 more flowers, all partial, and then I added numerous leaves as I knew I would want this panel to have a little bit of green and not just be all pink and red. I used the same coloring technique and colored the other flowers and leaves using the same color markers as before. Now, I did skip one marker color when coloring the additional flowers to make them less detailed. I trimmed my panel to 4 by 5¼ inches and then adhered onto A2 white side folding card base. With a gorgeous pattern like this, I didn't want to cover any of that up, so I opted to create a skinny strip sentiment. I heat embossed a message that reads, "So thankful for you," in antique gold embossing powder. I cut it to a thin strip and foam mounted onto the card. This sentiment comes from the Bitty Thanks and Gratitude stamp set from My Favorite Things. Lastly, I embellished the card using gold sequins and jewels. I hope you enjoyed this video and will give this coloring method a try. If you do, please share online and tag us on social media. We always love seeing what you guys are making. Subscribe now and hit that bell icon not to miss any new card making tutorials. Thanks for watching. Love you guys. I'll see you next time.